Hi, guys, and welcome to episode 77 of the Optical View podcast. This is part one of a two-parter with Paluna Santamaria. Paluna is, at the bare roots, a personal trainer, but she is so much more. We go in depth as to everything that she does and who she trains, her story, which is a crazy and wild one. I hope you guys enjoyed this one as much as I enjoyed it. I truly loved listening to her journey and the way that she was able to take me through the ups and downs of the fitness industry and really a personal trainer at the highest level. I'll see you guys in the next one. Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Optical View podcast. Today, I'm super excited to be joined with Paluna Santamaria. Did I say that right?
That was great.
Oh,
Great job.
perfect. Well, before we get into who you are, what do you do, I have a couple quick rapid fire questions for you just so the audience gets to know you a little bit better.
Okay.
All right, favorite genre of music?
Whoa, you started with a tough one. Um, I actually like all kinds of music. I've been known to go to raves and metal concerts, everything in between.
I love it. Is it based on your mood?
Yeah, pretty much based on my mood, and I also enjoy discovering new music. So sometimes I just play some random world new music on Spotify and discover new artists and stuff like that. And I go to a lot of concerts of people that I don't know.
Ooh, I
I
like
just
that.
went to, yeah, I just went to a recent one 2 weeks ago. Someone invited me, and I've never heard of this artist, and now I'm a big fan.
Who was it? Who was it?
His name is Ziggy Alberts. It's a an Australian kind of folk acoustic singer. He's only a 29-year-old kid, I think, and he's been touring Canada since he was in his 20s.
Wow.
But yeah, I just found him out a few weeks ago, and now we're waiting for the next show.
There you go. I'm gonna check him out. I have it written down here. Ziggy Alberts. So,
Yeah.
next question here. What is your favorite thing about yourself?
Uh, I think my ability to come out the other side better when a challenge presents itself.
Okay.
Um, I always say that I'm really good at breakups. Just to give you an example, a random example, just because I tend to focus on improving myself. So instead of looking at the problem and staying in the problem, I look at as many solutions I can possibly find and then just concentrate on that.
I love that. Wow. I wish more people had that mindset.
Yeah, it does help. If you just give yourself maybe a day or two or maybe a week to feel sad and bad about whatever is happening, and then from there you make a plan.
I love it. What
Hmm.
is the best gift that you have ever received?
Um, uh, I I don't know. I'm not very into material things, so I always remember gestures that people have. Um, More like, I found this piece of paper in this store and it made me think of you type thing.
Mm,
So I just really enjoy when people remember little details of things that you mentioned. Like, for example, if I say I enjoy discovering new music and then somebody randomly invites me to a concert or that kind of thing. So I think experiences, the best gifts I had have been experiences with people I love.
that's such a beautiful answer. I really love that answer. I'm gonna flip the question around, and you can take this any way you want to take it. What do you think's the best gift that you ever gave?
Oh, well, there's been a few. So this is just from my words of my own friends that I'm apparently amazing at gifts. Um, So I recently gifted a friend who really, really needed to get into fitness and couldn't afford it. I gifted her 3 personal training sessions with me in a written program.
Wow.
And she was more excited than I thought she would be. I was just like, to me, I do that for a living, so it's nothing hard for me to do, but she was over the moon, which it was really sweet because it's something that she really needs and it's useful. So I like to give gifts that are useful for people.
That's so beautiful. I'm the same way. I love useful gifts that are more along the experience aspect, like you said.
Hmm.
Do you have a favorite quote? If you do, what is your favorite quote?
I do have a quote. I actually have it tattooed on my shoulder. It's a quote by Friedrich Nietzsche, and it says, "Those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music."
Oh, wow.
It's very deep, but I think it really encompasses many of the reasons why there is problems in the world and problems within us as human beings. Um, just because a lot of the times we don't see and hear the same, even though it seems like we're looking at the same thing.
Yes. Yes. It's like it's not really a quote, but it's a scenario where there's two people standing on the ground and there's one person has a 6 and the other person has a 9 and they're arguing what
Mhm.
the number is, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like that. So it's kind of a reminder for me to always try and put myself in other people's shoes when we're trying to tackle a disagreement or a problem. Try to make sure I try to view the issue through their eyes to try to understand it a little bit better.
Yes.
And also a reminder for me to also learn to communicate and express myself better, because that's also a big part of understanding each other, right? So,
Yeah. Yes.
yeah.
I'm very curious about this answer here. If a movie ever gets made about you, which I think that'd be a wonderful movie, but if a movie ever gets made about you, who would you want to play you in the movie?
Oh my God. I have no idea. It would have to be, I guess, a Latina because I'm Latin American. Maybe it would have to be Salma Hayek or somebody like that.
Okay. Okay.
But that's a tough one. I have no idea.
Funny
But
enough.
yeah,
Oh, sorry, go on.
yeah, I was gonna say maybe just someone with a natural accent and you know
Yeah,
short dark hair.
interesting here. Now, funny, you talked about tattoos. I
Mhm.
love tattoos and I love seeing tattoos on people. Do you have a favorite tattoo either on you or on somebody else? And if you do, what is it?
Um, I think my favorite tattoo on me, I have a monarch butterfly on my hands, and I got this it reminds me of my grandmother because when I was really young, we went to see the monarch butterflies in Mexico,
Mhm.
and it was an insane trip. It was one of those super dangerous. You get in a truck with 10 people. There's cliffs on either side of the road. It was one of those things where you are just thinking, we're probably going to die before we make it to the butterflies.
Yeah.
And then when we finally made it, it was the most magical sight you could ever see. The butterflies are covering every single tree, so you can't even see the actual tree itself. You just see butterflies stuck to them and stuff
Wow.
like that. So it was a really cool contrast. Now that I'm older, I kind of realize that it's a cool contrast of how life is so awful and amazing all at the same time.
That's
So that's how I think about it, and it reminds me of her. So it's one of my favorite ones for
That's
sure.
we're gonna move to another quick segment here called this or that. I'm gonna give you two options. You gotta pick one or none.
Okay.
Audiobook or podcast?
Uh, oh, that depends on my mood. But right now, I'm gonna say podcast for the mornings, audiobook for when I'm walking.
Oh, I think I know this one, but maybe you'll surprise me here. Hot or cold weather?
Uh, oh, that's also a tough one. I'm gonna say hot, but I'm one of those weird people who doesn't hate the winter.
Oh, okay.
It just feels really long, uh, but I don't absolutely hate it. But I'm gonna say hot anyways, just because that's of course better.
Okay. Cats or dogs?
Both. I can't pick one.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Or tea?
Pardon me?
Coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee. 1000%.
That was an easy one.
Very easy, yes.
Morning person.
I am not a morning person. I am up at 5 or 5:30 every day. But when I'm off, my body always chooses to be up later at night. So I think I turned myself into a morning person just because of life, but naturally my body likes the evening.
Mm. Tacos or burgers?
Burgers.
Okay, okay.
Hmm.
Pancakes or waffles?
Pancakes.
Oh, interesting. Salad or soup?
Soup.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, 20,000 times soup over salad. I very rarely eat a salad.
Interesting. Apple or Android?
Uh, you know what? This is a hard one. I have to say Apple because all my products are Apple, but I've been kind of upset with Apple for a while. It's just hard to switch over.
Yes.
I don't want to waste time learning a new system and changing all my apps and all of that. So I kind of feel stuck a little bit. Um, but yeah, that's a vague answer because I don't know how I feel about it.
Introverted or extroverted?
I'm a fake extroverted, so mostly introverted. Um, I do love spending time with people, but I need time, a lot of time alone every day.
Okay.
Um, so I think they're saying that you can be kind of a higher percentage of either one, and I think I'm a introvert uh, at heart, but I do really well in extroverted activities.
Mm. Okay. And the last one here, pizza or pasta?
Pizza
That seems to be
every
com-
day.
that's the
Yeah.
common. Let's get into it. Who are you? What do you do? What do you want to be known for?
Well, I it's my story is a little bit crazy, so hopefully we have time. But in short answer, I work in the fitness industry. I work as a personal trainer, fitness instructor. I have training on pretty much everything from yoga, Pilates, rehab, um, kettlebell training, Olympic weightlifting, nutrition. I've been in the industry for about 17, 18 years now, and I work anywhere from boutique studios to corporate gyms. I was a Nike trainer for about 4 years in the past, and I've also worked with another company certifying other trainers in mobility and kettlebell training. So that's kind of what I do for a living. And I want to be known for, and I think this is what I'm known for already within the industry, and it's helping people find their passion and follow it. When it comes to fitness, I'm more of the idea of, instead of just having a aesthetic goal, to try and find a skill that you would like to develop.
Mm.
And a lot of the times people come to the gym mostly because they're not feeling great about themselves. Mostly because they're really stressed, or they're really tired, or they want to lose weight or something like that. And I always try to help them find something that they will be excited to learn, because while you're learning something, you are becoming fitter in the process, but there is also a different type of reward that nobody can take away from you. So an example of that is, I tell my clients, mostly female clients, that I if they want to learn how to do a pull-up, I just say, the days that I wake up bloated, I can still do pull-ups.
Mm.
So when you wake up in the morning and you look at yourself and you are unhappy with how you look because you're bloated, you go to the gym and you can still do pull-ups. And the abs are gonna come back tomorrow when you're no longer bloated. But the way your body looks is such a crazy thing to obsess about, because we have so many fluctuations within the same day that it can just get you into a unhealthy mindset, I feel like. So yeah, I just like to have as many certifications and as much knowledge as I possibly can in many areas of the industry, so I can show different options to people and they can find something that they're excited about. I have people who come to me and they tell me, I want to lose weight, but I hate running. And I'm always like, you don't have to
No.
run. You don't have to at all. You can bike, you can row, you can go on walks with your dog. There's so many things we can find, and my job is to have all these tools so I can show them to them and they can pick what appeals to them, and then we work on developing it together.
I love that. Now, I want to jump all the way to the beginning of your story. Now, I read a bit of it online, but I want you to kind of walk me through your
Mhm.
journey to here to Canada and to Toronto.
Okay. So I was born in Argentina. My mom is from Argentina and my dad is from Mexico. So we moved to Mexico when I was about 6 years old, and then my dad worked with human rights for children. He's a writer and an activist, and my whole life he was always very involved in helping the street kids in Mexico. Um, so when I was about probably 18, 19, my dad had to move to Canada as a refugee because of his work. His life was in danger when we were there. So a few years after that, when I turned 22, I followed him here. And that's how I ended up in Canada. Then for crazy reasons that I won't get into it because it's super long, I ended up alone in Canada. So I didn't have any friends. My dad was not around anymore, and I didn't speak English either. So I decided to go to the YMCA to ask for a volunteer position. And the manager at the time was from Chile, so he interviewed me in Spanish. And he asked me if I could teach Pilates at the Y, and like he really liked my resume that I brought back from back home. And then I said, well, I can start teaching in Spanish today, but I cannot teach in English. So he basically gave me this amazing volunteer job of taking classes. So he just said, just come to the gym every day and learn how to teach what you already know how to teach in Spanish, learn how to teach it in English.
Mm.
And when you're ready, you can have a job here. So I became, of course, obsessed with being able to teach a Pilates class in English. And I went to classes every single day. And what's really funny about it to people is that The anatomy terms are very similar because they come from Latin. So from English to Spanish, they're not very different. And when you speak Spanish, we use a lot of the anatomical terms, but in English, there's another word for it. So for example, the tailbone, the anatomical term is coccyx. And in Spanish, we would say coccyx, but in English, you say tailbone because people will understand tailbone more than they would understand coccyx,
Mm.
even though you say it the same way if you were studying anatomy in English. So I had to learn a lot of that as well. So it wasn't enough for me to just know the anatomical terms. I had to learn more of the lame terms that are used to speak in English in the movement world. I had to learn simple things like raise your arms above your head and fold over and reach for your feet and those kind of simpler words or phrases. So yeah, for an entire year, I went to class every single day. I went to the library and got a picture dictionary from the library, and I put post-its all over my apartment
Wow.
with so I posted that said door and calm and dish and window, and I literally every single section of my apartment had a post-it in it. So every time I looked at it, I knew what that was. And then for things that I couldn't put a post-it on, I made little drawings and I put those all over the kitchen cabinets if it was kitchen things, put them on my bathroom mirror if it was bathroom things. And I basically did that. And within a year, I was able to teach a class. Um, I couldn't order food over the phone because I would get overwhelmed and couldn't understand people over the phone, and I couldn't have very meaningful conversations at parties, but I could teach Pilates classes very easily. And then from there, I had a couple of students which are still now are my clients to this day, almost 17 years later, that were university professors. So I would ask them to give me notes at the end of the class.
Mm.
So they would always come at the end and they would say, you know how you said this? It was okay, but it would sound better if you said it this way. So
Wow.
I became very obsessed with my teaching and being able that my and we being able to explain one concept in many different ways so I could reach more people because people learn differently,
Yeah.
right? Every single person, some people learn visually, some people are better with auditory cues. So I became obsessed with choosing one concept or one movement and finding 3 to 5 different ways to explain it.
Mm.
So the way what that did is that it really helped me become not only, of course, proficient in my English, but it helped me kind of stand out as a teacher, which still to this day, and this is something that when you're going through it, you don't think about it, but it's the feedback that you get throughout the years from past clients or from referrals or stuff like that. And the feedback that I've always gotten in my classes is that I'm very easy at breaking things down and I'm finding ways to teach something. And I think that also comes from the idea that I think that if I'm teaching something and the student or the client is not getting it, is not their fault ever,
Yes.
ever, ever, ever. It's me. I'm not finding a way to get through you. And so that's my job. And I think a lot of the times teachers get upset at the student when they're not getting something. And I think that's a completely wrong way of thinking about it because if you're the teacher, your job is to find a way.
Yeah. As yeah.
So, so yeah, so that's I guess who I am in terms of how I approach my work, and I oh, and by being at the Y. it created more opportunities for me to study more. When I came to Canada, I was already teaching Pilates and flexibility classes back home. I have a degree in dance and humanities from an art school in Mexico. So I had a very strong background in movement, but it was more in the artistic dance world. So when I moved to Canada, I started with Pilates, and my dad was a yoga teacher, so I also had a lot of knowledge in yoga. But the Y offered a lot of training for newcomers as well, so I took advantage of everything. I took personal training certifications through them, and that's how I slowly started to get more and more involved in the industry. I never planned to work in the fitness industry. I thought it was gonna be a side, kind of like a side gig, like most people used to take it back in the day. I wanted to be a sports medicine doctor or a brain brain surgeon.
Wow.
But so I read a lot of neuroscience as well, just because I've always been interested in it. But just the way my life ended up being and the fact that I ended up here by myself, I ended up having to find a way to pay for my own lawyers to get my papers and stuff like that. Going to school, it was not a possibility. So I just took a million certifications. I did more Pilates training, I did more yoga training, I did kettlebells, and I specialized a lot on rehab. I work with stroke patients now. So I just dove myself into, like I said, just if I had a client who was pregnant, then I'd be taking a pre-postnatal fitness certification. I took a hypnobirthing certification. I did training with some midwives, or every time I found a client that had an issue or something that I didn't know much about, I would take a course on it, which then, of course, it helped widen my scope of knowledge and the amount of places and people I could work with. Um, I was never someone who did well working at one place. So the better I got and the more training I got, I started teaching all over the city. Um, so it came to a point where I was teaching in Roncesvalles and then all the way to Markham and then back to the West End. And my entire day I was going everywhere. And that was really useful for me because my name kind of got out there. And then I basically got job offers all the time.
Wow.
And it was really nice because I ended up learning so much from. It's very different to teach at a community center than to go to the, for example, the RBC building and teach the staff of the bank at the bank, and then go and work for Nike and travel to Vancouver and then teach the employees of Sport Check, or then I will go back and travel to a tiny town called Moose Jaw and teach a bunch of trainers over there how to do a kettlebell swing. So I basically learned how to teach in many different settings, which made me very adaptable as a teacher and as an employee. And that's why I never really kind of worked full time at one facility. Um, just because I feel a little bit trapped, not only being in the same building, but I also feel like there is so much more that I could do and many more people I could meet, and that's kind of how I've managed to survive in this industry from the point where when I started, people would actually laugh at you if you said you were a trainer or you work in the in the fitness industry. It was kind of like, okay, but what do you do? Or what are you gonna do with your life? And in a way, I feel really lucky because I can make a living only of this job, and not a lot of people can these days. Um, or you require so much more groundwork just because the industry is so saturated that your starting rate is going to be extremely low for a long time. before you can kind of make a living of this industry. So I feel thankful that I started when I started, and now I can just I've only ever done this for work, which very few people can say.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot to unpack here. So let me just rewind a little bit and see if I caught everything. So you were born in Argentina, and then you moved to Mexico City, and then from
Yes,
Mexico you came here to Toronto.
yes.
And that's when kind of your whole story got started here. Now I'm curious, were you always somebody, even as a kid, that was involved in sports and fitness? Because I know you mentioned you did have that dance and humanitarian background. Were you always somebody who had sports in them as a kid?
Um, yes and no. So my parents were very into being active, but in a non-structured way. So I was not taken to like put in sports or gymnastics or anything like most kids do here, which I kind of wish that would have happened because I was always very, very curious. But my dad did do martial arts and yoga. So there was a component of activity. I would watch him practice yoga and meditate every single morning by himself at home. And he had a judo master that he would go train with. And so I was kind of involved in that way, but not, I wasn't put officially into anything until I started elementary school I think I was in Mexico City. We started at 6. I was really young. We started at 6 years old. And the school I went to had a swimming team. So I was so curious about it and I wanted to be part of the team. So I begged my parents to take me there. And the way it worked is I used to go to school in the afternoon. So school would start at 2 p.m. from 2 to 6 p.m. But
Wow.
if you wanted to be part of the swimming team, you had to get there at noon. So
Mm.
basically, we'll go to school, we'll go swimming from 12 to 1:30 and then start school at 2 p.m. Um, so that was kind of like my first introduction to officially training sports. And then from there, it was honestly me who was always asking, can I get into basketball? And can you put me into this? And my parents weren't honestly insanely supportive in the sense that they were like, sure, you can do it, but you get on the bus by yourself type thing. And if you want to do it, you figure out, go find out the information and bring it back to me type thing.
Yeah.
So I feel that if I had been put in sports really young with parents who were very dedicated to me going, I think I would have done. I would have been a gymnast or something like that because I just had the drive and the discipline and everything without being forced.
Mm.
um, to do it, which I think it's a little bit harder to find out when you're a little kid. And you get it later in life, but at 8 years old, and then when I started playing basketball at 14, 16, I would literally get home and still practice in my bedroom with a basketball. So I was I was just very obsessive when it came to learning skills since I was very young. um, I do know my grandmother from my mom's side was very athletic growing up. She played tennis and played basketball, and she was also in music school, so she played piano really well. And I think it comes maybe from there that I was more obsessed with that type of thing. My parents were more, especially my mom is more of an academic. Um, to these days she has a really hard time being active.
Mm.
um, but I never had that problem. That's why that's why when people tell me about their genetics, I'm like, you cannot use that with me. My mom is overweight. I'm like, you cannot use that one. But yeah, that's basically how it was. I was not encouraged, but also not discouraged if I tried and I put in the work myself.
Mm. I'm so curious then. What pushed you to take the dance and humanitarian? Was that be a degree, I guess, back in Mexico City?
Yeah, so my dad was very into teaching us a lot about philosophy, art, and all the religions of the world and stuff like that. So I was always surrounded by every weekend we would go to a different museum and we'll go to see classical music concerts and contemporary dance and stuff like that. So when I was in high school, I was in public school. In Mexico, you go elementary school is 6 years, and then you have 3 years of high school, and then from there you go into college or university. That's how it's kind of the system is divided. So when I was in high school, it was the time for me to decide what I was gonna do in school, in college. And the way college works, there is two types of college. One where you kind of go and take the general sciences and history and all of that, and from there you decide what you're gonna do in university. So it's kind of like a little bit of extra work before, or you go into college right away and you come out of that with a degree. And
Mm.
when you choose that route, you're very young. Like I basically graduated with a degree in contemporary dance and humanities, which is just basically like sociology studies, art history, philosophy, all of that by the age of 19,
Wow.
which is very young. But the way it worked is when I got to high school, it was time for me to choose college, and I really did not want anything that had to do with biology, chemistry, or anything like that. So there was a school, and it's a very special school for kids who are arts inclined,
Hmm.
but it's very, very strict in the sense that you have to be extremely efficient at regular school. So math, writing, all of that. And at the same time, you have to be really disciplined and good at the arts, which would be dance, acting, music, and visual arts like painting and stuff like that. So I decided to try for that school. And the reason why I say try is because they take almost no people. It's very, very hard to get. When I got in, there was only 15 of us in my class.
Wow.
And within those 15, we were all divided in our different specialties. So we would take, let's say, history class all together. But then when it was time for arts class, nine of us were in music, nine of us were in dance, the other four were in music, there were three in visual arts, and then the other ones were in acting. And then we will go do our own separate thing, and then we come back later in the day for math class, and that's how the day will go. Um, so the way it works is I had to first do a written exam, which is the standard exam that everybody would do just to get into regular college. So that was all your basic math, chemistry, biology, history, all the basic sciences. And then on top of that, there was another exam that it was about arts. So basically, you had to know basic painters and the period in which they came up in history, and you know who Beethoven is, and Vivaldi, and all of these big composers, and which period they came in. So it was very, very specific that way. That was the first part. If you pass that, then you get to go to a week audition,
Wow.
which yeah. So that was the crazy part because you basically go to school for a week, and the way you go to school for that week is the way you would be going to school if you get accepted. So all you have to do is you go, and then there is your regular teacher, and there is somebody else in the room taking notes. So within that week, in one day, we're taking math class, we're going from math to ballet, from ballet to acting class, from acting class to philosophy, then from philosophy we're going to instrument, for example, and that's a whole day of school. And the audition was basically that, just to see how were you gonna handle that kind of load. If you were gonna show up every time, if you were, you had to be a little bit good at all of the arts because you have to pass the first year to be able to choose a specialty.
Mm.
So once I got accepted into that school, I basically didn't go for any other ones because to me this was kind of like a dream. I'm basically just gonna have to do 1 year of a couple of classes I don't like, and then by the second year I get to choose my specialty.
Yes.
Um, so the cool thing about it is you get that entire year to do uh, music theory, which is insanely hard. You learn how to read music, and then you pick an instrument and you learn how to play that instrument, and then you also have to take, so it's basically the people who wanted to go for music or for visual arts, they also had to take ballet, which it was a nightmare for them. And the people who wanted to be dancers had to be drawing sometimes, and it's a nightmare for you. So it's kind of like the test of who lasts who lasts this year, and then after that year you choose a specialty, and then what happens is once you have your specialty, all of your extra classes are within that theme. So I went into dance specialty, which means I had ballet, three different techniques of contemporary dance, traditional Mexican dances, I had choreography classes, and then I had arts history, for example. So if I were in the music specialty, for example, one of the classes would be music theory, the other one would be instrument, the
Mm.
other one would be music history, that type of thing. And then on top of that, you have your regular classes, so philosophy and all of that stuff. Um, so in my mind, I thought I was going to choose acting just because I was like, my dad was a went to acting. He studied acting in New York for a while, and I was kind of like more interested in it. And then for acting, once you decide to choose a specialty at the end of the year, you also have to audition for that specialty. So it's not just the fact that you have already been in school for that year and the teachers already know you. You have to do some extra auditioning and assignment when you're choosing your specialties. Um, so when it was time for me to audition for the acting specialty, I had a health scare. Like I just randomly fainted at
Wow.
home, and it had never happened before, and we didn't know what it was, and I basically didn't make it to the audition. And the schools are like that. I don't know, maybe here is different or maybe now is different, but back in the day, it was like too bad you missed it. So when that happened, all of my dance teachers who during the year kept on telling me to audition for dance, went to the director of the school and told him that they wanted me in the program. So I didn't have to audition for the dance program because
Wow.
my all of my teachers basically wrote a request and they were like, "We want her in the program. She couldn't make it to the acting, whatever. We will take her." Like basically, they said we will vouch for her to be in our program, and that's how I ended up in dance.
So you,
So
you know how to salsa dance then?
surprisingly, I can only salsa dance if the partner knows how to salsa dance.
Uh-oh.
And that's a misconception that people have with dance, where they think if you went to dance school, you know how to dance everything, but it doesn't work that way. I wish it worked that way because I would love to be good at hip hop, and I'm terrible at it. But yeah, that's how I ended up in the dance program, and it was kind of good in the sense that I liked it enough, and it was easier for me to get through it because I enjoyed it, but I always knew I didn't want to be a professional dancer. So it kind of saved me from a lot of the issues that a lot of my friends had in terms of body image and, eating disorders and that kind of stuff that is very common in the dance world. I didn't have any of that because I didn't care. I was just like, I'm gonna do well while I'm here and I'll do my best. And then when I'm done, I'm just gonna go and try to do, sports medicine or something else.
So then when you
So
moved here to Toronto, right?
mhm.
After that was after you already took and completed that, right? So what was your first step? Did you realize that you wanted to be a part of fitness immediately when you came to Toronto, or is that something you kind of stumbled upon?
So the way it happens is I graduated with my degree at 19, and back in that time, Pilates was having a boom. You know how these trends come and go?
Yeah.
So back in Mexico, everybody was obsessed with Pilates. And Pilates was developed by someone who started with training dancers. So all the dancers were obsessed with Pilates, and that's how I heard about it. So out of curiosity, I went and took a Pilates certification in Mexico. And the only reason I did it, again, it was because, all the dancers were doing it. It was created for dancers. A lot of dancers would teach it and whatever. So I did the certification and it was super interesting. Pilates training is very, very heavy on anatomy and biomechanics. So it gives you a very strong base on the human body. Because if you understand anatomy and biomechanics, I always tell people who want to get in this world is the exercises don't matter. Because if you understand how the body works, you can make up an exercise. But if you don't understand how the muscles are supposed to contract and what the bones do and where they attach and what their jobs are and whatever, it doesn't matter what exercises you're choosing. You're just randomly choosing stuff. So Pilates gave me that very strong base. And because I was already, I had graduated from dance, it kind of made me really good at Pilates on the first try. And the woman who was teaching the certification I took asked me if I wanted to teach at her gym
Wow.
during that course. And it was taught at one of the biggest gyms in Mexico City where only big celebrities and big athletes train. So the course was run there. And when she told me, she was like, I want to bring you in the team. I think you have a lot of potential. I want you to teach here and whatever. I, of course, was kind of like, what? I'm going to work here? It was a big, big, big deal for me. But then when we started the process to get me hired, it turned out that you had to be, I was 18 and you had to be 19 to be able to work at that gym. Um, I have no idea what kind of random rule that was, but basically we had to wait for me to turn 19 to start working there. So a year later, I started working there, and because of my dance background, they offered me other classes that were easy for me to kind of morph into fitness classes because of the dance background. So they gave me a flexibility class. They gave me a very fancy cardio class, and that's how I ended up in that world. So when I moved to Toronto, I just from what I saw with a lot of immigrants in my situation, it just seemed to me that the route they would take was just get any job as soon as you can and then figure it out later because you're trying to survive as an immigrant here. But then what happens with that is that it just pushes them away and away and away from what they were doing back home or what they want to do. And I didn't want that to happen to me. And because I didn't know if I was going to be able to go to school for sports medicine or what was I going to do, I thought, what's the closest thing I can do to what I like. So I want something that has to do with the body. I want to be able to have a job where it's going to allow me to be active my whole life and that is going to help other people get healthier. And the best thing I could do was just go to a gym. And because I had the Pilates certifications and all the classes that I had been teaching for, I moved to Toronto when I was 22. So I had already been teaching for a few years. Then that's how I ended up at the Y, because I thought I'm not gonna go get a job at Tim Hortons. I'm gonna go to the Y, so at least I'm in the field or close to it.
Yes.
If I'm not in sports med or whatever, at the gym I'm gonna meet physiotherapists. At the gym, I'm gonna be at the gym. I'm gonna be involved with like people doing things for movement and health, and that's why I ended up like that. And again, like I said, just because the way my life ended up being, that I ended up here on my own, it just became, I just got kind of sucked into it and I was more interested. So then I took another certification and that gave me another little job in the industry. And then I take another certification and now that gave me another opportunity here. And that's like, I ended up kind of staying in the industry because I just kept on improving myself within it. Um, but yeah, it was also not the original plan, even though it was somehow calculated. If you think about the fact that I chose to volunteer for a year without pay, um, while kind of figuring out what I was doing instead of going straight to a different field or job.
Wow. Now that must have been a very tough and challenging time, not knowing where the future of what you were doing was going to go. How did kind of the evolution of you and all the knowledge and certifications and courses? I mean, you talked about taking so many, probably over hundreds. Um,
Mhm.
how did that kind of turn into the person and trainer that you are now? Was there a particular gym or person that really put a spark or a light bulb on in your head that thinks I can do this professionally as a job for the rest of my life?
Um, I think honestly, it was just me seeing the results of the work. And I think that's why I kept on, not looking anywhere else other than just improving within the same industry. So it was basically I would take a new course, and now I made a friend in this certification, and now this friend is invited me over to their gym, and now I'm working at this gym.
Mm.
And then there I meet another person, and for example, I never thought I was gonna train people in their home, but then these ladies who were coming to my Pilates class, the ones that are university professors, one they approached me and they're like, "Oh, would you be interested in coming over to the house and teaching us Pilates there? Because my husband wants to do it, but he doesn't want to come to the gym." Okay, then I'm teaching people in their living room how to do Pilates now. And so it is basically that I just kept, of course, I have met so many inspiring and amazing people throughout this journey. So I'm inspired still every day by my own clients and by the people I meet and how many friends I've made, and basically my entire world is in this industry. But I think me sticking with it is basically that. It's just noticing how, oh, if I to take this other course, then there's another opportunity there. And I think I was lucky enough that I've always been very curious. So I think a lot of the times people kind of find a thing they obsess about, which is great. I think you have to be obsessed about one thing for a long time to be really good at it, but then they don't want to grow out of that.
Mm.
So then you close yourself to so many doors, right? And also sometimes I think that trying new things gives you reassurance that the thing that you're doing is what you want to do.
Yes.
So to give you an example, I within the industry, I never really was interested in any endurance sports or activities. And so I do a course, or maybe I go take a couple of spin classes, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, oh, this is not a part that I really care for. So then I don't have to focus my attention on that. But then through, let's say I have a client who was interested in, took an Olympic lifting class.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, okay. I tend to go and try the classes that my clients tell me about just because I want to understand what they're doing. So a lot of the times if they tell me, oh, I went to F45 or I went to CrossFit or I do whatever, I'll go myself and try the class.
Mm.
And that just gives me a better sense when they're trying to explain something to me. I understand them better. It's good for me. It's also good for you to do things you're not good at or you've never done before. I'm a big fan of that. So, for example, I was already working for this company called Agatsu Fitness,
Yes.
certifying other trainers in kettlebells and mobility. And one time they offered a powerlifting and Olympic lifting course. You can't even call it a certification because on a weekend you are not gonna leave Olympic lifting well. Like you need years of practice to do that. But I take this course and now I'm fascinated by this. And I'm thinking, how am I going to learn to properly Olympic lift?
Yes.
So this is back in the time when CrossFit was just starting to be a really big thing. So I stumbled upon a CrossFit gym and there were Olympic lifting components to CrossFit. I do maybe less than a month of CrossFit, and then I realize I really don't see how I'm gonna get better at Olympic lifting when we do snatch on one day and then we don't do it again for 2 weeks and
Yeah.
then we do it again and whatever, which is not how CrossFit is anymore. It's a lot better now, but that's how it was
Yeah.
10 years ago. So then I find out that out of that gym, there is an ex bronze medalist from the 70s, Olympian in Olympic lifting training, his son, and another two people who want to learn Olympic lifting. And this guy, his name is Alexander Barbanov. If you look him up, he's basically an Olympic lifting legend from Bulgaria. He has records that haven't been broken since the 70s, so he's a big deal. At this point, I have no idea who he is. At this point, I'm just like, this guy seems to know Olympic lifting, and people say he's amazing. So I went to him and I said, I want to learn how to Olympic lift properly because I took a course and I don't think, you know, I know what I'm doing, and but I just want to learn it. I'm just gonna train with you if you let me for a year, um, and then move on and continue with my stuff.
Yes.
Which is something that I tend to do when I discover a new thing. I try to dedicate myself at least one full year, full time to it, so I understand it well. And then if I want to keep it, I keep it, and if not, I let it go. But I know at least I gave it a good go, which is what I'm doing with boxing right now. But anyway, he tells me, okay, no problem, join the team. So I joined this Olympic lifting team, and after a couple of months, he starts telling me, asking me why am I not trying to compete if I'm basically training 5 to 6 days a week for 3 hours, 4 hours a day.
Wow.
And I was just like, I just get better at it. I'm just trying to learn. And I'm just gonna do this for a year to learn it well. And he was like, you have to compete and it'll be good for you or whatever. So I tell him, okay, we're gonna make a deal. I'm gonna start competing, and the day I'm no longer afraid of snatching, I would quit. And 8 years later, 8 years into Olympic lifting, one day he comes and he's like, Paluna, you still scared? And I'm like, yep. Still scared of snatching 8 years later. So I ended up training full time and competing for 10 years.
Wow.
before I decided to let it go. But that's how, for example, that's how I ended up, in that world. It was also nice because it was a thing that I was doing for me, which is a hard thing to do because I work in the fitness industry, but then also a lot of my hobbies and the things that I enjoy doing are fitness things.
Yes.
So then people end up wanting me to teach them a thing, and then now I don't have a thing that is just mine.
Mm.
So that's what I also liked about Olympic lifting, is that it was something that I was not teaching anyone and I wasn't planning on. It was a thing that I was just doing for me. Um, now I teach it, and I have a couple of classes a week and I train people in it and whatever, but I don't compete in it or anything anymore. But yeah, that's how I ended up. That's how I'm still here in
Wow.
this industry.
Do you still have time? Can I keep talking to you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Reminder here, guys. Charity event, September 30th. Tickets are on sale. Link is in the bio. Get your tickets now. It's going to be a fun one. Thanks for listening, guys. I really, really do appreciate you taking your time and listening to this podcast. Once again, just a quick reminder, please do like and subscribe wherever you guys get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc. And like the Facebook page and also like the Instagram page as well. And don't forget, subscribe to the YouTube channel and the TikTok as well. Thanks again, guys.